Hey friends, it's Dimitri with Reorder Schedule. Today I want to talk about second and third order consequences. I have mentioned this a long time ago in previous videos, but I wanted to make an in-depth video about this concept and how it relates to your clothing brand. The concept itself is pretty easy to understand, and I'm gonna show you why, but it is, I would say, a deeper level of thinking for an entrepreneur or business owner when you're starting your brand. But if you can kind of get a handle on it and start thinking that way early on, it's going to help you a lot in your brand. And if you are currently running a brand or business and you're not thinking this way, it's definitely going to be useful for you because you're going to be making way smarter decisions from this point on if you apply this type of thinking and teaching. So what is second and third order consequences? Before I answer that question, we're going to answer the first one. What is a first order consequence? So that is the immediate effect. And I'm going to use a real life example before I go into the clothing aspect of it. So let's talk about the immediate effect of binge drinking. I know that's like a really crazy topic, but I've seen this kind of thing in my family. A lot of people struggle with this, and it's a true, first, second, third order consequences from that. You see it in life. So the first immediate effect of that would be you get your buzz or your high, you're chasing that dragon, you feel good from it, right? And then the second order consequence is you have the longer term effects. So in this example, if you're drinking a lot, binge drinking, you could be hungover, you can have a bellyache, you don't feel good, you're dehydrated, you're late for work. So that's kind of like a second order consequence from that decision, right? It might take place the following day, over the week, over the month, right? And then we have the third order consequence from that, and that is the longer term effects. Actually, this one should just be longer term, and basically the outcome of this decision. So if you are constantly binge drinking, the outcome of that and the long-term effects is you're going to have liver damage, you're going to suffer from poor health, and you're going to die sooner if you're going to chronically drink and become an alcoholic. So that is kind of a real-world example of this concept. So you have immediate effects of that, you have long-term effects, and you have longer-term effects and eventual outcome of that one decision to binge drink. And now I'm going to go on and explain how this applies in your clothing brand. And this was a really interesting concept that I learned maybe like 3 years ago. And I only really kind of understood it when I started to sell hats and sell books and stuff in my business. The reason why is because the complexity increased. So typically with consequences, complexity is increasing in terms of for your clothing brand or for any business you're running. Now, complexity and consequences itself, I'm going to pair these two together. Those can be good or bad. So a consequence is not necessarily a bad thing. It just has a negative connotation. We hear that word a lot and we think it's a bad thing, but it just means that basically the outcome or the effect of it, back to the definitions right here. So for my example that I'm going to use, I'm going to be talking about hats and what hats did in my business and how that affected it. Overall, obviously, it was a good thing to add hats, to sell hats on my website because it was another product that I offered. I made a lot of revenue from it. A lot of customers bought hats from me, and it was a net positive thing. But there were a lot of effects from adding that one single thing in my business. So when I started my business, it was very, very simple. And oftentimes when you guys are starting your clothing brand or business, you want to start very simple, very focused, very direct. Adding or starting with a tremendous amount of complexity is often not a good idea because you're not able to handle that. You haven't learned enough yet. But as you grow and mature, as your business grows, obviously there's going to be complexity added into it. And the second and third order consequences are going to sprout out from that. So when I started out, I was shipping stuff in basically 3 different mailers and the USPS priority mailers. That was really how simple my business was. I was basically just shipping hoodies, sweats, and t-shirts. I did not have hats or any other fancy items. I didn't sell books. I didn't sell patches. I did sell stickers, but that did not really affect much in terms of the complexity because those can just be added into the bag. But as I introduced my first hat, I started to really understand the second and third order consequences. The first thing is, obviously, you need boxes. You simply cannot just dump a hat into one of these and ship it out because the bill is going to get crumpled. The hat is going to just get destroyed in the mail. It's not something you want to do. It's not industry standard, and it doesn't make sense regardless. So using boxes is definitely something that changed, and I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna start writing down all the consequences of hats so you guys really get an idea what's going on with your business. So obviously, I had to purchase 3 different types of boxes, which eventually rolled into 4 because I found another box that was cheaper, that was easier to ship, and it worked really well for that situation. So for you, let's say that you are introducing hats into your business as a product to sell, you're definitely going to be probably around this number of how many boxes you need. The reason why is because let's say a customer orders a hat and a t-shirt, or they order a hat and a hoodie. You obviously cannot fit a hat and a hoodie in one single box, right? Like this box, for example, can fit like 1 or 2 hats in there, but it cannot fit a hoodie and stuff like that, or 2 hoodies. So you're going to have to get a variety of boxes. What do boxes do? And we're going to just keep going down the list with effects. They take up more shelf space. And they take up significantly more shelf space. You guys have seen this, my setup for my shipping station. The boxes take up significant amounts of the shelf. Poly mailers, a stack of these for 1,000 is about this big, like a cube. Just imagine that. Whereas a stack of 25 is literally of these boxes is literally the same amount of space. So you can see from 25 boxes to 1,000 mailers, the amount of space it takes up. Now imagine 1,000 boxes. That would fill up a good chunk of this room. And let's say that you are at a point in your business where you're literally selling like 1,000 hats a month or something like that. You're going to need a ton of boxes. That's obviously another second or third order consequence of that. Another thing that you have to do once you introduce hats into your business, you have to tweak your reorder schedule / you would also, if you're running a Kanban system, you have a reorder card, you would obviously have to make a new order card for that. And the reorder system is also interesting because sometimes you might be purchasing from a website and they have a threshold of if you order a certain amount, you get free shipping or you get a discount. So whenever you're reordering supplies, sometimes you have to juggle certain things and order some things right now and some things later. You kind of have to play around with that as you learn and grow. And that's what I do to get good rates, to get stuff in on time and make everything efficient, basically. Another interesting thing that arose from having hats, obviously when you have the box, you also need tape gun and tape. That's another supply that you simply need to have. Like when I started my business, I did not use this or have this. I had no purpose for having a bunch of amounts of tape. Tape gun. One other thing kind of related to the boxes, but I'll just add it here, is packaging paper. Obviously, sometimes when you put a hat into a box, you don't really want it to be tumbling around. Or let's say that you are shipping a hoodie and a hat, that's going to be tumbling around. So you definitely want to add some sort of packaging material in there. And that's going to be an additional thing that you have to go and find or purchase in order to make this system work, in order to offer a product, aka the hat, to your customer. A big thing that changes with hats is freight cost. These basically always go up. If you are shipping a box, it's more expensive than if you're shipping something in a poly mailer. It's just always expensive because And it's not necessarily even because of the weight, although USPS, like I mentioned before, they do charge by weight and by volume. Obviously with the hats, the box takes up more volume than a poly mailer when it's in a, in a shipping container and stuff like that. And also internationally, sometimes it's kind of tricky with shipping out hats because you might have settings set up in your shipping, on Shopify or whatever, and you kind of have to tweak it a lot more. And that's obviously another second order consequence with the shipping. You're going to have to tweak your shipping systems. So tweak shipping systems. And like a point under that would be you might have a separate rate that you're charging for shipping hats, and you're going to have to go plug in those numbers. Whereas if you were just shipping out shirts, you're not changing any of that. It's all straightforward, very simple. You're going to have to develop new packaging methods. So if you are detail oriented, if you're trying to, really present your brand as nice, you can't just toss in, your clothing, your hats, your items. Let's just say you're selling just a variety of products. You have to be really thoughtful and attentive to all those details about how you package it so that the customer gets their items in one piece and it's not damaged and it's not just a huge mess in there and it's not presentable. Going the extra mile to take care of those little details really matters. And it's important. I've gotten packages from the mail where they're just completely torn up. They weren't packaged right. Stuff was damaged. I had to send it back. And you definitely do not want to put your customer in that kind of precarious situation. I'll give you a very easy example of this. I always recommend you need to use at least a 3, the thickness of the mailers. You don't want to have mailers that are too thin. So you definitely want to pick mailers that are thick enough to handle the job. And if you use ones that are too thin, the customer is gonna have a product that arrives to them. It could be damaged, right? And that's kind of related to the new packaging methods as well when it comes to hats. With the new packaging labels, let's just go up to here. You are gonna have to update your training manual. Let's say that you have customers, or not customers, sorry. Let's say that you have employees. Update manuals or videos, or let's say you're making training videos. You have to train your employees on how to properly package stuff, how to tape stuff. You have to be attentive to all those little details, and they have to know that. So obviously when you introduce hats, you're going to have to tweak the training videos, training manuals, teach your employees what to do, all that kind of stuff. And obviously to yourself, that's a learning process and a learning curve, and you're trying to figure all of that stuff out. One thing that you have to have, and this is an interesting one, typically when you are selling hats, a lot of the hat designs are embroidered on there, or they have woven patches or something like that, but a lot of it is embroidered. So your knowledge of embroidery, you have to have like a baseline knowledge of how embroidery works. Some things simply do not translate onto hoodies, hats, t-shirts with embroidery, and some things do. And you have to know kind of like the baseline of how it works. So you need to up your embroidery knowledge. That is assuming that you did not have embroidered goods, like you still haven't made an embroidered t-shirt or a hoodie, right? But now you're making a hat and it is embroidered. You kind of have to know a little bit about that, because what could happen is, let's say that you are designing a hat on your computer and you made a mock-up and you already showed it to customers and like, oh wow, this is so cool. But then you send it to your embroiderer, the person that's making it for you, and they're like, hey, this is not gonna work. The design is too big, the design's too small, the text in it is way too small, it's not gonna work for the embroidery. So now you're gonna have to, basically redo everything. You have to make sure that you're creating artwork that's gonna work out for what you're trying to do with embroidery. And that goes, full spectrum on anything, whether you're doing it for hats, hoodies, t-shirts, anything like that. And finally, one thing that you might have to do when it comes to the second, third order consequences of hats is you might have to tweak or change your specification sheets. So spec sheets, and any other templates that you are using. So these are basically like when you have a t-shirt ready to go and you have the artwork and you have the dimensions of the artwork and how many you're ordering, all that kind of stuff, you basically have like a specification sheet that you're sending to your manufacturer. Well, when you are doing stuff with hats, it can kind of change, that could change for you. So that's definitely something that might change. You might have to make a different kind of specification sheet or different templates that you use when you're communicating with your manufacturers. But that's kind of a small thing. But overall, this is just showing you guys just from one. So this was one action that I took, offering hats as a product to my customer. And these are all the downstream effects from that one action. That's the whole point of this video. Every action you take in business, there's often second and third order consequences. There's effects downstream of that action that you take. And you can look at this in life and anything. Like, for example, the one about alcohol. These are all the effects of binge drinking, right? It's not good for you. But in business, it's the same thing. There's all these consequences that happen. And you can look, here's your homework. You guys can look in your life and in your business and see so every action you take, what are the effects of that action? What can possibly happen from that? And this is important. So back to the simplicity thing. Let's say that you're starting a clothing brand and you want to offer a hat for one of your first products. Well, now you know exactly what's going to be happening when you do that, right? And let's say that you're not ready for that you don't have enough money, you're not set up for that. I mean, let's just say you made a hat and you have it done, but you don't have, like, you literally have no money, you don't have any shipping supplies, you don't have a tape gun, you don't have any of this stuff set up. That's what can happen. So in conclusion, I would say start out simple most of the time, unless you're ready for that, unless you have money for that capital, unless you've done all this homework, and work towards offering more products, which in turn will be more complicated, but that's not a bad thing. And which in turn you'll have the second and third order consequences of that, which again is not a bad thing. There's good consequences and bad consequences. But from this exercise, now you can see what can happen when you make just a really small decision in your business, where it can take you, where it can go. So try to make good decisions, try to think through those decisions, especially if you're making a big decision, whether that's a move, buying a piece of equipment, switching over to manufacturing yourself. All of these decisions that you make can really have big and long-term effects and lasting effects on your business. If you got any value from this video, or if you have any comments or questions, you can leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys later. Thanks.